We are entering week 12 of college football, and the Big Ten championship race is still relatively open. And today I am going to talk about my opinion on the Big Ten's performance in week 11, discuss my power rankings, and later talk about two games or situations involving two games that I find interesting. If you are new to this channel, give us a like, hit that big old red subscribe button, hit the notification bell next to that subscribe button, and comment your thoughts down below. Question for you all. What was your favorite game to watch during week 11 and why? Tell us in the comments below. Anyway, let's get right into it, into the best sport that exists, and talk about Big Ten power rankings. I'm going to go through and just discuss each team and kind of why I have them there. Ohio State is pretty obvious. Their strength, just unlimited offensive firepower and talent that is well above really any team below it besides maybe Michigan and Penn State. But anyway, their one weakness, I would say, is pass defense. Ohio State here is a team who is well coached. They have talent. And listen, all the motivation in the world as well, especially after that Oregon loss. They've been tested multiple times. They are battle hardened. And they are young. That might be another weakness. But these close games have really been helping them advance. And they're just the team to beat right now. Michigan, their weakness is red zone offense and run defense. Their strength is probably everything else. And, their pass game on offense gets criticized a lot, but as a Michigan fan, Cade is looking better. The pass game is looking better as well. All in all, I think it's just the play calling. It's mainly play calling that is the weakness on offense, not even the pass game. Michigan, I have ahead of Michigan State because I think outside of the head-to-head performance, Michigan is the better team. I think Michigan would do better against, say, a Georgia or an Alabama or even an Ohio State than Michigan State would. But that just lends credence to the fact that Mel Tucker is a good coach. But Michigan controls its own destiny if Ohio State beats Michigan State this weekend. And Michigan right now, they have a chip on their shoulder. They're a good football team. They're not yet at Ohio State's level, though. Michigan State is in a similar boat as Michigan. The difference is, while Michigan has this really good pass defense and, is just kind of more consistent all around, Michigan State is kind of this unstable but high potential team. There are moments where they are absolutely unstoppable. Then there are moments where you're like, this is not a top 10 team. We saw the not so top 10 team against Purdue. You saw moments of the unstoppable team against Michigan, which was Michigan State having good coaching and taking advantage of Michigan's weaknesses. And this will be a real test against Ohio State. Against Ohio State, you will see the real Michigan State because I think Mel Tucker has these guys ready, and even though this is a likely loss, you will see who Sparty really is against the Buckeyes. Wisconsin and Iowa. And as I go down the list, I'm going to spend less time talking about them because there isn't as much to talk about, especially when it comes to their future, because their future is just a bowl game. It's not really anything more. Wisconsin, I think, is the last team that I'm talking about who can actually win the Big Ten. I have no faith in Iowa to win the Big Ten. Wisconsin, yes, their coach has not won a Big Ten title, but they're bouncing back from a 3-game loss, lost to Notre Dame, Penn State, and Michigan. They found their offensive line. Mertz is getting better each game, just slowly but surely. They have a run game. Their defense is finally forcing turnovers. Their weakness, of course, is still Graham. Hello, I turned the ball over. Mertz. It's not as bad as Iowa, though. Iowa has far less of an offense. Their O-line is subpar. And their defense, if they don't get turnovers, is not the greatest defense either. Iowa, I think, could win the West, but if I could bet with good conscience, I'd bet a lot more money on Wisconsin to be able to beat Ohio State than I ever would the Iowa Hawkeyes. But that's just my opinion. Purdue, like Illinois, is a team that just can upset. They have the capability to go into teams or face off against teams who are better than them, like seriously better than them, and just straight up beat them. Like, do I believe that Purdue is better than Michigan State all around? No. Do I believe that Purdue, per se, is even better than Iowa all around? Well, that may be the case, but if Purdue loses another game and Iowa, wins out, goes 10-2, what am I to say, to be honest with you? Purdue, just the way Ohio State shellacked them was unbelievable. It was incredible to win. It was incredible to watch, especially the highlights. You should check those out. But Purdue is a good team, not a great team. Penn State, they let Michigan come back. Harbaugh, as my dad said, was out Harbaugh'd in Beaver Stadium. Now, that doesn't take away from Michigan's win, but Penn State, I would say your future, it may be certain on paper, but if you want to win anything, your future is uncertain. Franklin, we'll talk about this later, is 10-9 in his last 19 games. Harbaugh, and those 19 games consist of Franklin's season. Harbaugh in his last 2 seasons is 11-5. And there's this narrative still that Franklin is the far better head coach just because of one game. Anyway, though, we'll talk about that later. Minnesota is, in a certain sense, like Purdue. More so like Illinois, though. Confusing, but they can be competitive against bigger teams. Remember, that Ohio State game. In Ohio State, they've improved a lot on defense. The offense, though, has been pretty consistent all year outside of when Stroud was injured because, like against Oregon, C.J. Stroud performed the same way against another good defense in Nebraska. So Minnesota has proven they can put up a fight against good competition, and then they lose to teams like Bowling Green. So I don't know what's up with Minnesota. They've had to deal with injuries. They've had good running back depth. Their strength is run game and offense, and I think somewhat defense as well, but their weakness is just Tanner Morgan has regressed so much. Rutgers here. Rutgers, they climbed because the way they destroyed, or rather taxidermied Indiana is the better term. They forced, 6 turnovers. We're going to talk about this game later. They have an opportunity, a better one than Maryland, in my opinion, to go bowling. Nebraska can't go bowling. I think they beat Wisconsin or Iowa. I just feel that, I don't know. Maybe I just have too much faith in Scott Frost after he now knows his job is secure. Anyway, though, listen, they're if they finish 3-9 or even 4-8, they're better than a lot of 6-6 or 7-5 football teams. And it's not even saying enough. But they don't have much of a future for this year, at least. Their future resides in next year, so there is not a lot to talk about, per se. Maryland, the way Maryland played against State told me 2 things. It told me that Michigan State is in little to no position, for now, to compete with the big dogs outside, of course, a team like Michigan, who is their Super Bowl, and teams that are slow to adapt. So basically, they can compete with great teams, doubtful about elite teams. But we'll see. Did not mean to criticize Michigan State there. I meant to criticize more Maryland. I don't know what Maryland even is. You had a pick from Thorne, among other things. I think Michigan State fumbled inside their own 25. They couldn't capitalize off of anything. And they had so many penalties. It was unbelievable. Like, what are you doing? You also fell for a flea flicker. Get out of here. I think Maryland, at this moment, does indeed lose out. Illinois, confusing team. They had a bye. Like Nebraska, there is not much to talk about. Northwestern and Indiana are the corn that has been sitting at the bottom of the field for months. And spring is coming, the snow is thawing out, and you just see this basically black, oozing stick. That's just how bad Northwestern and Indiana are, especially Indiana. And we'll get to Indiana and Rutgers later because that situation is interesting. But first of all, I want to talk about James Franklin. I want to talk about him because against Michigan, you had an opportunity of opportunities. You know, you beat Michigan. A, Jim Harbaugh stinks, which he might still. But B, you can win out and go 10-3. And you are redeemed. That's momentum. That shows you can go through adversity. You know, after Clifford being injured, in which case you would probably enter that game, you know, what? Like 8-1, maybe come out 9-1, or just barely lose and be 8-2 if you had a healthy Clifford all year. It'd be so huge if you beat Michigan, especially the way you came back. I was at that game. Penn State scored, you know, it was 14-6. They scored 11 unanswered points to take the lead 17-14, and then the pass to Eric All for a touchdown. And then the play calling, it was atrocious. You know, not scheming Jahan Dotson into your 4th and 2. What are you doing? I mean, I know that you targeted him on 3rd and 2 and we big hit him, but the 4th down play calling for that last play was atrocious. You know, faking 2 special teams plays in a row. You don't even do that in Madden because the computer knows after one play, oh, we got to watch out for this. And apparently Franklin thought that Jim Harbaugh and Mike McDonald, or the special teams coordinator, and Jay Harbaugh were not as intelligent as a computer system from a college football video game. So, Penn State fans watching this, what do you think of James Franklin and that performance? Because Michigan should have, in a certain sense, if Mel Tucker was Penn State's head coach, Michigan loses that game. And it's the same point I made for, you know, Jim Harbaugh when facing State. I relate to Penn State fans here because your coach blew a big game. Absolutely blew it. Just like how this was on a smaller scale what Michigan did with Michigan State. The lead was, 3. It wasn't 16, but nonetheless. This was on similar scale. Like bad, mediocre play calling from the beginning. You get down after having somewhat of a lead, and then you come back, lead, have the momentum, and you just kind of give it up. It's bad play calling, bad execution. You had so many drops. It was unbelievable. Clifford looked awful, but that was mainly because of the offensive line. I mean, your coach out-Harbaugh'd Jim Harbaugh, and that's the reason he won. It's like if Michigan had Paul Chryst against Michigan State for a day, Michigan wins that game. If they had Pat Fitzgerald, maybe even Greg Schiano, they win that game. And it's the same thing here. If Penn State, for a day has a better head coach who makes better decisions and isn't stubborn and has better football IQ than Jim Harbaugh or Franklin, well, they win the game. So I think James Franklin is safe, contrary to some people's belief. I think that he will be given all of next year, especially with his recruiting class. And it's not like they have a losing record like last year. They'll probably beat Rutgers. There is a good chance they beat Michigan State because of how those teams match up. Penn State could finish, anywhere from 7-6 to 9-4. And if they finish 9-4, he will definitely be safe. I know he was expected to do better this year, but still, sometimes you just got to take as a university, not as a fan base. The fan base shouldn't take this, but take what you have and wait. So we'll see. But tell me, what do you think about James Franklin? in the comments below, because I think, you look at the box score, and Michigan had 361 total yards. Penn State had 332. Each had one turnover, 21 to 20 first downs for Michigan, Penn State. These teams were pretty even, Steven. And Penn State still found a way, despite more attempts in the red zone, to lose, whether it was the missed field goal, some drops, or the fake field goal. So that's just my opinions on this game. I find it very interesting. But even more interesting, this abomination. This is an abomination. I mean, I admit, I thought Indiana would be, wait for it, 10-2. Yeah, you can laugh at that all you want, and you can definitely laugh at that. I laugh at that myself. They could go 2-10. They could go the inverse of what I thought they would. Listen, losing to Rutgers 38-3 is Vanderbilt stuff. I mean, how do you even do that? And you look at the game cast and the box score and the highlights, which I watched. I didn't necessarily want to, but if I'm going to report on it and if I find it interesting, have to watch the highlights. Listen, you had 6 turnovers. Jack Tuttle is awful. Your O-line, awful. Donovan McCulley's a freshman. I can't even call him awful. Nonetheless, he still played like he was awful. And Rutgers outgained you 320 yards to 262. And listen, Rutgers, when you gift them the ball, smacks you with a bowling pin, 10 times across the face until your skull shatters open. And that's what they did with Indiana. Indiana gifted them several points, yet could only muster a field goal. They missed another field goal. They made one right before half. It just is what it is. And Noah Vedral didn't even have an amazing game. He didn't even pass for 100 yards. In fact, it was Pacheco who seemed to be the main star with 79 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns, along with just Rutgers play calling. And listen, Rutgers has the far better chance now than Maryland. I've already talked about this to go bowling. If Greg Schiano goes bowling here, it's huge. It's not like Mel Tucker, starting off, 8-0, but it's something for Rutgers. I mean, Rutgers, in a certain sense, I didn't necessarily think this before the season, but in retrospect, Rutgers is probably in the hardest position, talent-wise, to succeed in the Big Ten East. Indiana, though, you had so many expectations coming in. And listen, my 10-2 prediction in retrospect was ridiculous. That was stupid. I shouldn't have even had them beat Michigan in the Big House next year because I actually thought Michigan would be respectful, or a respectable program, pardon me, to play. But 2-8, your only wins over Idaho and Western Kentucky, it's garbage. And Michael Penix, yes, is injured. Jack Tuttle was injured. There are a lot of injuries. But losing 38, Michigan only beat you by 22 points. You pulled within closer margins to Michigan State and Michigan. And you finally show your true colors to the whole world and let Greg Schiano kick you like a soccer ball across the field 10 times. What are you doing? Listen, 18 completions out of 42 attempts, 177 yards. On average, 4.2 yards per pass. You know what that's measured in feet? That is 2 of me. Their average pass traveled 2 of me on the ground. That's horrendous. And they had 2 picks on top of that. Their highest rated QB, Grant Grimmel, had a 50 QB rating, which is actually higher than Noah Vedral's QB rating. So you're not even facing good product. This is gutter trash. You handed Rutgers the victory, and then you only rushed for 2.6 yards a carry. So Indiana, I don't even know. I don't even know what to tell you. At this point, whatever his name is, the head coach, Tom Allen, I don't know why I forgot that name. At this point, what he should do is you should just tank and I think he's been doing this by playing Donovan McCulley and some other freshmen, you should tank, get the freshman experience, because let's face it, your season's over. And I think he has been doing this. Play a bunch of freshmen, people who can start next year, revamp and hit the reset button and go into next year as a fresh team. Because this, I get that you might have been overhyped. Well, you definitely were overhyped. I get that. It's not an excuse to go from 6-2, and if you had a normal regular season, probably having one of the best seasons in Indiana history, you can't go from that to 2-10. It's inexcusable. Absolutely inexcusable. And what a job by Greg Schiano and, Tom Allen and that staff. I don't know. They have a good recruiting class for Indiana standards, but I just don't know. I did not expect this to happen from the preseason. Rutgers, ironically, along with Maryland and Penn State, are the teams I most accurately gauged in the East. Rutgers being a team that would struggle throughout the year, but find its way to 5 or possibly 6 wins. So that is impressive, and I do think Greg Schiano, with his recruiting class especially, and just how he's already winning Big Ten games, whether they are small or not small, it's good. So good job for Rutgers. I think you have a future, and Indiana is kind of in the unknown, I would say. That's really all I have to say for today. I thought that the Indiana-Rutgers game was interesting. I thought that James Franklin and the Penn State situation was interesting as well. I already previewed the Michigan-Penn State game. It's one of my more recent videos. I will link it down below, along with my Ohio State Purdue reaction. I'll link the reaction and analysis to both of those down below. That's all I have to say. If you like this video, remember to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and comment your thoughts down below. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you around.